So very excited to have Stephen joining us today. Stephen, why don't you tell the crowd a little bit about yourself if they don't know you already?
Hey guys, thanks so much, Sarah. So I am the CEO and founder of a company called Tidal. And so believe it or not, if you went way back to when this stuff started to all make sense to me, or I should say I got more curious, is reading the book Predictable Revenue. And that shouldn't be a surprise to some of you who may know me or have heard of me. All the haters about predictable revenue and product-led growth, I'm sitting there going, it's always worked for me selfishly, right? So I look at this in terms of you're always going to challenge a model. It's like fashion, right? If it's in, it's out tomorrow. If it's out tomorrow, it's in today. And we see similar trends. So when I was talking with Sarah, so we see similar trends in email and cadences or what works and what doesn't. And I will say that part of that's good because not everybody should be doing the same thing at the same time. And so there's a huge benefit to multiple and diverse thoughts here. So there is no one way. I'm a firm believer that there's no way that I go predictable revenue is the only way to make money. Otherwise, you're broke. Writing an email sequence like this is the only way, and this is the subject line that works, or else it won't work. It doesn't exist. So I can tell you there's no silver bullet we'll give you. I wish we could, but then this webinar would probably be something we make you pay for, and that just isn't possible. And so Sarah and I were kind of talking about, well, what works for us and the teams and the clients we work with, because we get the privilege to look at real data every day. So our teams get to comb over data and go, well, predictable revenue, if they're consulting with somebody on how to get something working that's not, you can really pour over analytics and go, I can see that we need better content or the ICP is wrong or whatever, very high level, and they can dig really deep. Where we go and primarily where we live and breathe is, we're solely on the execution side. So we will design a campaign, we will do that, and then we'll go execute on it. So we get to see in motion the data versus relying on the company to say, hey, it's going good. So Sarah and I bring some unique perspective to that. So I'm excited to talk about a couple things today in particular, but I think mostly that just guaranteeing there is no silver bullet, but there are some really, really good people out there who are making a really good living, whether it's in sales, top of the funnel, full cycle, by learning how to analyze their own data, if you will. And then how do you use that data to, if you're a one-person show, right? So Gina up in Brookings, like, what's up? Brookings, South Dakota is on the webinar. Like, if you're the only one at your company for whatever reason doing this, you might need to say, gosh, I don't have sales operations. I don't have the support of the corporate down initiative. So I'm going to do this on my own. And I would say that's probably when you're the most dangerous in a good way or a bad way, because you can kind of do whatever you want. You can kind of do whatever you want. So you also can't really benchmark yourself against your peers if they're not doing it. So it's fun to look at it that way. So I guess I'm going to just stop there before we really dig into it. Sarah, bringing it back to you or anybody else who may have a question to even get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super excited to dive into this stuff and to give you a little bit of the lay of the land, guys, where we're headed is we're going to talk about a way that you can sort of build yourself a framework to follow, because like Stephen said, there is no silver bullet. There's no one way we can tell you to do this and it's going to work every time. But if we give you the tools to build it the right way each time that you build it, you're that much more successful, that much more likely to kind of stay up to date with all the changing trends and all these types of things. So yes, like Stephen said, I'd love to hear if you guys have a question. Maybe you have a specific thing that you're struggling with when you're writing your sequences, one particular thing that you find doesn't really work, or it's a hurdle that you're trying to overcome, or maybe it's that you don't know what doesn't work in your sequences. But please, guys, if you've got, any specific questions, any specific roadblocks when it comes to sequences, cadences, messaging, whatever, all those bits and pieces, please do jot it in the chat. I'll make sure to cover that and make sure to touch on that. Because where we're going to start, and I'll keep going until you guys give me a little question or a little comment there. Where we're going to start is where a lot of people are getting things wrong. There's a lot of kind of conflicting information that's coming at us from various directions, whether that's some of these big players in the space of sequencing and messaging, like the big SaaS products that put out great content, or whether it's individuals like Stephen and myself who are out there doing it and then sharing the things that work and the things that don't. Either way, it really seems or can seem like everyone's telling you something different. And therefore, it's very difficult to know what works and what doesn't. But I'd like to start getting some perspective from Stephen, who is out there, boots on the ground, doing it, to understand, Stephen, what you think is being done wrong these days with sequencing and messaging and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there's a lot right, and there's what I call a lot wrong. And so we're living in the world of the practitioner, especially within LinkedIn. So any of you on this webinar could hypothetically go tomorrow and be a self-proclaimed email wizard and put together some really great content. And believe it or not, there's an audience there for that. And they're the same kinds of people who at night when your baby cries and you want to sleep, you'll go online and pay $199 for an ebook just to make sure, just give me something. This isn't working. This looks good. There's 4 reviews. I'm in, right? And so I think the dangerous side to that is when they don't use data to support their claim, I always go, well, that even sounds cool, but how do we know it works? And you can write a whole book about it, and you really are maybe using rounded numbers and this and that. And I said, well, still, how does it work? Like, show me an instance where you can show me the performance of this, at least with 1,000 contacts fully through a sequence in this one. And now we can look at data, right? Because even in an A/B test, Sarah, I mean, we know this, like you can't really get a thorough result of an A/B test until you get to 1,000. Is this magical number that says if it's below that quantitatively, it's not enough. If it's above that, you've waited too long. So let's settle on this number of 1,000. Now, if you're headed to 1,000, you say, I have a 48% open rate and a 2% open rate. Maybe it's time to pull the plug. And so you got to kind of take the human element and go, maybe that's the one. And so Sarah, I'm going to bring it back to you before we get into this. I want to kind of touch on sort of, let's get into the Josh Braun and Beck Holland debate, because they're both good, very good methodologies, very firm practitioners. Is let's peel it back just to the simple subject line. So I'm sure you talk to companies all the time. I want to get your perspective on what are you seeing that's working with subject lines? What's the gossip around what people say might work that you're not seeing working? What is kind of currently working in your opinion?
So what is really working in the current sequences that I'm writing, and this is across many to many different personas across many different industries. So it doesn't seem to be concentrated in one area, is the brief, pain related, sort of slightly vague type of subject line. So an example of what that would be things like missing data. Of course, it's got to really relate to what you're then going to go talk about. We don't want to do a bait and switch, but as an example, missing data or bad customer review or something like that, kind of 1 to 3 words, pretty short, pretty vague. That is something that I'm always trying, and it always kind of touches on the pain points that we think are most relevant to that persona and that segment of the market, so that it's relevancy above all else. The other thing that has been working really well has been when we can leverage a little bit of segment relevance, like for instance, city name quotes. I was working with, they're a case study client of ours, Cost Certified. They are a tool that helps contractors and the like do their quotes and have a kind of a live showroom, virtual showroom type thing in this platform. So sending to them, the city that they're in, quote, vague. I want to check that out. I want to see if that's something that's important to me. And I apply kind of the same principle to regardless of what the solution is. So either pain related, vague, short, or touching on something they really care about, a little bit of customization, not overly personalized. I can still scale it, but still vague and still short. That's my thoughts. What about you, Stephen?
I like the scale part, because that's the thing is we forget about is some people do have the quote unquote luxury. I don't think it is a luxury of having a segment that's small enough where every email has to be personalized, because you can't quote unquote burn a lead, right? You might have 200 possible customers. You have to, every relationship matters immensely. So maybe that email is much more looking like nurturing and education and highly personable, always relevant, kind of pulling this account-based methodology along to get into these accounts at a very slow and methodical pace. The timing has to be right. You have to warm them up. But if you're looking at the reality of most people in sales go, Sarah, welcome. Day 1, you made it through training. Tomorrow, good luck. You got your username and password. I think you have LinkedIn Sales Nav. Have fun. And you go, oh, and then you go to YouTube and you have to train yourself how to use LinkedIn Sales Nav, because there's not a lot of corporate training involved, and it's kind of this self-paced thing. And then you mentioned something that and forgive me if this was you, I don't think it was. Someone said on a subject line, what they saw working was that it's relevance in the subject line by only saying, instead of Starbucks, I'm going to mention a small coffee shop, a quaint one. So you can drop a technographic in and say, insert coffee shop in city with, except for these ones, Starbucks, Caribou Coffee, go down the chain ones. And then that relevance comes up as, but this is getting a little sneaky, right? Hey, Sarah, I love John's Coffee. One of my favorite coffee stores. It reminds me every time I'm in Canada, I have to stop there. Oh, by the way, I have some stuff I'm going to pitch to you, right? Or whatever. So I'd say be careful how you use that. You can use it, but again, now you're getting into, if you have bad data, you have really bad emails. Because if I'm mentioning a coffee shop and you don't live there anymore, you're like, wow, this is obviously, that's 7 years old information. I haven't lived in Massachusetts for a long time. Then you really look like you're using data drops. So I think for me, the best subject lines when I see it are the ones that, I'll give you an example. So if you're going after the payroll industry, I'm just using a very vague industry. Say you're in one of these new global deal multiplier. There's these huge companies that are just exponentially growing with the global expansion. And your subject line was delayed payroll. Okay, so number one, that's a little bit of a bait and switch because you're not delaying payroll. Number two is it's probably going to get open because people don't want to ever have their paycheck late. And so that might get the attention, but then it might give them a very bad taste in the mouth when they open it up. And you go, ugh, isn't that the worst? Nobody wants their payroll delayed, especially when you have a global payroll force. Like now you're going to sound a little tricky, a little bait and switchy, and you may get a high open rate. Vanity metric, leading indicator, lagging indicator says if you get no meetings or nobody reads it or you have a high unsubscribe list and now your domain's blacklisted, that didn't work out so well. So I like to follow the rules. So my subject lines, Sarah, tend to be kind of boring and they poke the bear, right? So it goes back to yours. It's kind of the Josh Braun theory of I want to be relevant. So I'm going to poke a bear that you probably can get sensitive to. So where we lead is always the subject line. And then the first thing is immediately stating the problem we solve.
Yeah.
Now, if you get a good subject line, you should be able to get in there and get right to it, right? And I'm a big believer that also as you segue into the first email, it's really it's more demand gen at this time because we don't believe that there should be a call to action on the first email. I know it's very against the way people think. We want to get in, we want the email to set in their email box. So now we can come back to that email with responses. And we know that Microsoft or Gmail says thumbs up, they landed. And so we can come back as many times as that fishing line set. Now we kind of have it in the water. We can do demand gen alongside with a very aggressive cold call campaign and then point back throughout the cadence to the subject line of the email we just sent or the one that we're about to send. For example, hey, Sarah, probably don't check your voicemail, so I'm going to talk a little slower. This is being transcribed. Please look for the email with the subject line Panda Bear. I look forward to hearing your feedback on that. You're going to get that on your iPhone or Android and go, what the heck is this? Subject line Panda Bear. Okay, so at least it draws you to it. But again, unless it's relevant or unless they really have a problem, really you're upping your chances and propensity to get somebody who may or may not have interest, but at least goes, that's cute. So cute doesn't get you paid though. I mean, what gets you paid is they show up to a meeting, they're qualified and the meeting completes. So I want to get your thoughts on that in terms of that, because to the turn from subject line to first email is the most interesting thing to me, knowing that if that's not it, no other subsequent email will likely ever work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think while the subject line is the gatekeeper to that email, these days people see a preview of what is at the beginning of the email anyway. It's not like you can't see what's coming. And so there's this kind of vital real estate that exists in that subject line and then the very first line of the email that you've got to use and you've got to use well. And yeah, poking the bear is one of my favorite ways for doing that. So there's kind of two favorite ways that I have for starting an email. If I've got a small market or a really huge target account or something like that, it's going to be personalized and it's going to be personalized to that individual and it's going to be relevant. So I won't necessarily come in with something like, hey, this is your favorite coffee shop, unless I'm selling coffee related software or something, but I'm doing something that I can tie into what I'm then going to be speaking about in the email. But barring that, so when we're dealing with a larger target market, lower, average deal size, and we want to get a little more scale going, then it's that poke the bear question. And it all comes down to relevance. We got to make sure we are, like you said, Stephen, poking a bear that we assume they have based on a very educated guess, based on research that we've done into our historic customers, our best customers, what they look like, what they were dealing with, why people came to us, and also research just into that market. What's going on in the market? What do people care about? What are they measured on in their role? What are their metrics and KPIs? What are they trying to get done? What sucks about that? What can I make suck less about that? And here, let me tell you about what sucks. And then I'll tell you about a world where it doesn't suck as much, but same as you, I'm not going to ask for your time in that email. I'm going to say this sucks. What if it didn't? Bye. See you later. Have fun. Catch you next time. I'll leave you to marinate on that. Yeah.
Well, it's timing, right? So I'm in a post about this the other day. we are assuming that okay, so you're going to pull data in whatever order you pull data in. And if you think about that, it's going to put it in an order, or you're going to get a list and you're going to go through people, or you're going to build it on the fly. And when you call that person that day, they say good timing. All I say is, where is all the bad timing at, right? Because if I can have good timing, how many other good timings am I just missing? And then they would say, oh, well, that's where it's relevant, because you should only approach somebody who you know has expressed the problem. And I go, I'm calling BS, because the thing of outbound says, if they're not aware that there's a solution to their problem, they're not aware of the acute nature of their problem, or that it exists, that something can fix it. It doesn't mean they're going to say today, oh my God, thanks for calling, but that demand gen like email function. I say demand gen, it's almost the wrong term, but if you can make it more of like, that's where I'm giving, I'm not asking. I'm asking you in other forums, and something we've experimented with only in an outbound cadence for us versus our clients is because it requires three things. Is number one, you need someone in your organization who's posting routinely thought leadership onto LinkedIn. Why LinkedIn? I'll tell you in a second. Number two is you can then take that, if it's your CEO, for example, you can take that quote, put it in the email and say, I bet you don't like to exchange emails with a stranger, right? Or something like that. Here's a quick quote from my CEO. You can follow her on LinkedIn. That way you don't have to deal with petty sales guys like me, but you know where to find me if something she says is of interest to you. And then you put the LinkedIn quote there. They know it's a safe quote because it's LinkedIn, or a safe link because it's linkedin.com, whatever the name is. And if they do click on it and choose to follow, now you have an audience for life. And so you're peeling them out of email, which is very static versus dynamic, and putting them into a lifelong nurture of your thought leaders, or it's okay to quote yourself too and say, hey, I know a thing or two about you and what you do. You might want to follow some things. I put out videos, I've attached one of them, but I post daily. So, that's a great way to draw them into you versus you're a person on the end of an email. It doesn't matter. So that's another thought, is how do you drive email away from email and upstream, right? And email works, don't get me wrong, but I personally prefer to set a meeting while doing active discovery to qualify that prospect, because I can't qualify that well on email. I can't ask them questions, or else I'm going, hey, Sarah, one more thing. Hey, Sarah, one more question. You're like,
or objection
enough,
handling.
man, I don't have time.
Just can't. You got to make up what you think the objection is really about, and you got one shot to handle it. Whereas if you're in a back and forth, you get to dig in and understand why. I think what's interesting about all this is that we keep coming back to when we're thinking about using LinkedIn, like drawing people towards LinkedIn, that's obviously a brilliant strategy for that segment of the market that likes to live on LinkedIn. They like to spend their time on LinkedIn anyway. So you put them there. Great. You're already there. You already like it there. Go there, see my stuff. That's a funnel that we're creating there. But what's interesting is obviously in some markets, those people just don't care about LinkedIn. They're not spending their time on LinkedIn. So what we keep coming back to is that whether we're talking about that subject line, we're talking about the way that you're reaching out to them, or the platform on which you're reaching out to them, the medium, it all comes down to segmentation, which is the first most important thing, cannot be avoided. You have to segment first. You cannot reach out to every single person in the exact same way and hope to stumble upon this good timing. Like Stephen said, it is all timing. We know most of the market is not out there actively looking for your solution. Some tiny percentage is already looking to solve that problem. Some slightly bigger percentage has that problem and didn't know it could be solved. And so goes like, okay, I'll have a talk. And some other percent, even larger than that, sits back and goes, okay, that's now in the back pocket. When this pain point becomes burning, I'll come back to this. And we see that with outbound. And that's where it behaves a little bit like marketing and demand gen. Like you said, we're positioning ourselves as like, you come back to me when you're ready, but it all starts with segmentation. So how do you, with your clients, look at breaking down that overall market so that you can send the most relevant, timely message?
I'll give you an example of a customer who's been the most difficult, one of the best customers, but most difficult segments, because you can't find this information on the internet, right? So this is the tough part, is they are very much a software company, but what they do is deal with growing companies who are looking to have a presence in China with social media, because with the way China's run is you can't, like, language barrier is one thing, and so you can't access it, right? Because China owns Chinese social media and you can only view it in China. And so like, it's very specific, but if brands want to go over there and listen socially or see the communities built around their brand, they don't have a mechanism to do this. So this great company who deals with the Major League Baseball, NFL, federal government of the United States, like they're going outbound for the first time. And how do you segment to find out what companies
Are trying to
have
get
a
into
presence in
China.
China, but nobody to measure their Chinese social media presence, because everybody we call goes, oh, I don't know who would handle that. Like they're just
Yeah.
like, it's
It's not even,
beyond them,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Wow.
But they have a business model that can obviously, like if you do it once, you can do it 20 times, and they have 140 customers. So how do we go outbound, if outbound's truly the way to grow, right? For them, and identify the critical point at which a company might think about this. Well, now you're going, okay, is it Dun and Bradstreet? Am I looking at growth? Am I looking at other competitors who are just like them, who grow at a certain year?
Mm,
That's a timing thing, and timing with segmentation there is everything, because you might look and say, oh, all software companies with more than 100 people have a presence in China. Qualitative data says so. Okay, you're guessing still, but now what's the title that handles it? That's really tough, where you can go into a lot of segments of the people on this call and go, oh, I know what my ICP is. I know what the titles that respond to me is with messaging. Or here's the other thing: if you've been doing the job you're in for 5 or 10 years, you may think you know it, but the market shifted behind you and you're selling to the old customer while the new
yeah.
customer is buying from your competitor. And that's the scary part.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. I've definitely had some challenging segmentation myself with some of our clients, because there's a bunch of ways you can segment. Like you've just pinpointed a very sort of nebulous thing to try to
Yeah.
segment on, and obviously that's super tough. In some cases it's a little more cut and dried, where maybe you're saying like, okay, we know that when somebody, we work better with companies that have a certain headcount because it's based on this team being very big and then these problems emerge. So we go look at how big that
Mm-hmm.
team is, or whatever. Those types of segmentations are maybe a little bit more simple. But another pretty common and pretty great way to craft really relevant messaging is to segment based on use case. And of course, that is if you are a product or a service that has many different use cases. So another client that
Yeah.
we're working with, who's a graph database technology, Neo4j, they work basically with any company that has a large amount of data that needs to be dealt with. That is pretty much any company on God's green earth. And
Yep.
they've, set a threshold for a size of company where it starts to really make sense. So great. Doesn't narrow it down by a whole lot though. So they can work in pharma, they can work in data science, they can work in supply chain and logistics. All these things are completely separate use cases, but you can group those people by the types of challenges that they have that would be solved by this product in that use case. And again, we're getting into scalability, where you want to be able to create the largest possible group of people to which the same message is relevant. If you
Yes.
pick two people out of your group and say, if I talk to them in a room, I wouldn't pitch it the same way as I talk to them in the room, two different segments. If you can pull somebody from two different segments and say, if I had them in the room, I would talk about it the same way, same segment, group them together.
Yeah. Yeah. You also go to LinkedIn and look at content. Good content creators know their audience and know the words that matter to their audience. And they speak in a language that the audience can identify with. Why do we get it in content, but we don't understand it in email? That's the interesting thing, is, oh yeah, maybe I should listen to podcasts that my buyers listen to and not seller podcasts. So I can speak in the language they do versus get really good at selling. Like, oh yeah, what if I knew the language that a CFO, God forbid me, spoke in? Maybe
Mhm.
I can sound somewhat intelligent and talk about current trends. And then they kind of look at you and go, you're credible.
Mhm.
I was going to share some data and just how to take a look at it. Am I able to share my screen? I want
Yeah,
to do what you just did and share a
let's do
visual
it.
story. So this is
Absolutely.
one of our best case studies in data. If you look at this, is we've got the standard things that all you guys have. So customer here has been with us a long time. They're great. 35,000 cold calls. Some of you would fall over dead. That's kind of like a day in the life for us. But I mean, I think everybody on this call is here for a reason. You want to up your game. So realize this is an effort over 6 months. So let's look at the call connect rate. So when you say segmentation, you may say, wow, these are really low connect rates on the phone. If you're above 8%, I say it's good. Well, we were hanging out between 4 and 5. And so it's timeout. Our client success team said, something isn't hitting here. We're not there. And usually 4 or 5 weeks into a client working with us, or a campaign that you're running at your company, and if it's not working, you kind of go, oh, it's
Mhm.
not working. Sarah, it's not working. The campaign's not working. The magic wand's not waving itself. And I'm panicking because I got a quota. What we found out is they were, to your point, going after 13 different verticals, right?
Mhm.
That's a lot. You can't really you can't segment your message. You're really not specific with the person you're talking to. So we said, okay, what about the sub-industry? Sub-industry had a big color of the rainbow and then a lot of things that weren't good. So we still had 6 or 7 sub-industries. What we found out was, oh, it's retail stores with more than 100 or more stores that have enough data that creates the mess in that environment that these guys say, I have a problem that you can help me with. And the second we did that, because we're targeting $5 billion plus companies, we started to get 12 to 14 meetings a month. That's a lot for that segment. And all we did is say, it's an early stage Series A company. They don't really know what they don't know yet, but they're very smart. Let's help guide them into the market. Once we planted, we could personalize the message, make it relevant to their role, how their problem specifically was impacted, how we might be able to solve it, proof that we could solve it that they would care about. And then it was night and day. And thank God they were patient enough to make it through the first 8 weeks. Does not sound like a long time, but to someone who's launching a brand, 8 weeks is 8 years. And so that's how we view segmenting data. And all of you can look at this if you have a CRM. I mean, shoot, we're happy to hop off with a line and just say, hey, here's what I would do to look at it. And I just feel that looking at your own data, you've got to be accountable for your own performance. Don't wait for your manager to tell you. You can see this stuff in your systems.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're having a look and you don't, whatever system you're using doesn't seem set up to give you that information, pretty much every system that you guys are using right now gives you the ability to create little things that will help you with that. So if it's a field, if there's a field that you need to add in that helps you track industry so that then you can start to measure industry, add it, or, ask whoever is your sales ops person to help you add it. If it's not there, ripe for the picking, get it in there because it is going to make your life so much easier if you can gather this data. Okay, we've talked a lot about kind of the theory behind how you begin to write that message. So we're coming at that segment, we're coming with relevance, we're coming in with those pains. We talked a little bit about that kind of framework for the initial email, soft call to action, if any call to action at all. What about building the follow-ups? How do you go about that in your sequence?
I'm a big fan of tying at least one email in each set back to the original email. So Justin Michael calls these clusters and spears and clusters, right? So think of 3 different spears, tip of this spear, right? And I'm heading in with this. Number 1 for us is the problem we solve. Number 2 is the proof around it, not a boring case study. Not we work with Uber, Amazon, and Google, like a real authentic homegrown like storytelling narrative. This can be done with pics. I would embed video, use video how you want to. If it works for you, it works really well. I bet if you don't use it, it definitely doesn't work. So you can get as granular as you want. You can have a whiteboard and put on Vidyard and record it and say, I want to walk you through our process. I worked with Johnny's Apple Seeds and they were here. They went up here and this is how they did it. That's still proof. And now you're throwing in the human element. We come back on proof as the second spear, and then we hook back the cluster. And we don't do a thoughts bump. Like that was the big popular thing. We tested, didn't work. I know we talked to you. A lot of people say it doesn't work. Some people say, oh, it worked great for me. I'm like, well, it didn't work for us. That's what I know. So we don't thoughts bump it. We try to bring relevance back. And then we break off when we get to that third set of emails called persuasion, hence call to action. Even when we're giving proof, we don't say care to try yourself, care to learn more. Now, once we're to like that 4th email on the 12th day when we're getting to persuade, because now we would have called them like 10 times by now. They've got 4 emails. Here they are. It's time to like bring the heat. So that's when we get into a call to action and paint consequences that if they don't solve their problem, and if they even have it, this is what we've seen the problem accumulating to. So a little bit of fear, death, and bloodshed goes a long ways, but not too much because you will piss people off. Like you don't want to upset them. You want to just kind of say, by the way, this is my call to action is this, right? You can gift them something, but I think it's too early to get into more of a demand gen where you're kind of passive. Like you have to be aggressive at that point in time, because now you're going away. Like when you're going away, you may never come back to them again because you get busy, or you might not know how to manage lead flow properly, and you'll never literally talk to them again. And so like we gave them 20 days and we said, you're not going to buy. Oh man, on to the next one. Well, that's 20 days of a jammed, spam heavy cadence that you decided that Sarah Hicks, because she didn't respond to me or answer my phone calls, not in the market. No, because there's other channels, there's LinkedIn, there's social. Maybe she tends to want to do her own research. So outbound won't work for everybody. It won't work for every prospect, but this increases your average. And I think you have to segment down to the final. I said this, and I want to make sure I can say this in a simplistic manner. Look to A/B test on the way out versus at the early stage, because you almost want to flush out the people who aren't interested and get them out on that second to last step or last step versus keeping them there. Because if you go on to use that data again, you might want to say, well, here's my higher intent ones that never responded. I'm going to start there. I'm going to nurture those people forever. Everybody else will resort through the data later and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We got a couple questions here. So we have one question from Vince. No call to action until the 4th email. Stephen, is that what you're telling us?
I prefer not to. I've seen better results when we don't, and I've seen better results from the call to action when we haven't asked anything until that point, because they almost wonder why you haven't. And when you do, they go, oh, there it is. Like, there's the thing.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing to like wrap up an email in the earlier steps?
So an example might be, Sarah, and then I give the proof, right? I worked with Nick down in Louisiana. He was in a similar situation as I'm assuming you are, but I don't know. Nick was 10 pounds overweight, did our program for 3 months, ended up losing 12 pounds. He didn't have a drastic amount to lose, but it seems like you might be in that category based off of our data. I apologize if I'm wrong. And that's it. Because I don't say, am I right? I just say, I apologize if I'm wrong. And so then they might just say, well, they didn't ask for anything. So to me, it throws them off. And they go, maybe this isn't spam. Maybe this is not a sequenced email because they said my name. They gave me a story. They said it might persuade. The only way I would think it would matter to me is if in that moment it hit me and I went, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Sarah, I'm interested in learning more. Like, and we go, oh my God, the email gods are great. They said, oh my, and then what? Like now you got to still set the appointment. Like now you got to go back and say, okay, great. Click on my link. And or you call them and they don't answer. You go, oh my God, they said they're interested, but now they won't respond to me. And that's where with email it gets tricky. And eventually you go, should I just send them an invite for next week? No, you gotta grab them in their interest. And always keep in mind this, guys. More than likely when they're responding, they're between very two busy things, either dropping a kid off here or picking someone up, going off this Zoom meeting. It's okay to follow up because a lot of them need it. Like they need to be reminded 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Just follow up and be professionally persistent. Don't be a jerk. And then keep in mind that that's okay. Like you should be able to have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. There was another question that came in just a little bit, and you've mentioned a couple of times, like, use pictures, leverage a video, walk them through something. So how do you feel about links or attachments at various stages of your sequence, given spam risks?
Yeah. Not a fan of emojis because I think more people kind of tie that to consumer, but that's just me. I've seen pics work very well when you embed images. I've seen Venn diagrams work very well. I've seen them be a disaster. I think what you need to do is create your own Venn diagram that would grab their attention. So it's not about you, it's about them. For example, Sarah, here's predictable revenue as I see it, but I see science here and you go, ooh, I don't like that. What does that Venn mean? Why are we on the outside and not the inside? And you kind of poke the bear a little bit. You can make a Venn diagram on Canva in 2 minutes, right? So I've seen that be very powerful. I've seen links be powerful if placed right. But to me, I don't cover it up and say, click this link here and then the link's under it because I want them to see the link. I don't want them to go, I can't click on this. And I always have to put it at a credible source, YouTube, right? Or LinkedIn or something that's obvious versus go to my Bitly or go here, go to a site you don't know. I try and make it a credible site.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would you reserve that for your follow-ups kind of once you've landed in the inbox, or are you good to put that even in the initial email?
Nope. I don't do images, attachments, or images, yes, on the 4th email, 3rd email sometimes, but no attachments, no links until someone's shown interest because those will absolutely slow you down. Attachments are the big no-no. Links, talk to a different person on any day and you'll hear different things about deliverability. Yeah, I think the link thing more to me is everybody's kind of aware now, like don't click on that link. Like if I don't know that link, they're going to go, ooh, IT says not to. I wonder if this is a phishing scam. And I don't want to be the person busted. So I try not, and I'll ask them sometimes, would you rather have me just send you a link versus continuing to email you? And then surprisingly enough, that's the one that usually gets the sure. Yes, please send it.
Yeah, that's something that we've been trying out quite a lot is like we've got basically like we have our super helpful article on how to prevent XYZ for your persona or your segment or whatever. I'm happy to send it over if it's something you're interested in seeing. So going for the, like, it's not a call to action. it's not asking it's not a classic call to action. It's like an ask for engagement,
Yep.
which then will help you start the conversation, but you're starting off with value, and you're asking permission to give them that thing, or waiting for them to ask you, as opposed to just including that link to that case study or whatever. Because I mean, the likelihood that somebody is going to click out to read something about you when they already don't really know you and aren't looking at you and your solution, like, I don't know, if somebody sends me a cold email, I don't care about your case study. I'm not going to look unless you've already really
Yeah.
grabbed me with everything else, at which point I'm probably just going to say,
Yep.
like, cool, let's have a conversation. So if you want me to know something useful from that case study, you better tell it to me in the email, because I'm not going to read the case study.
There's a company. Have you heard of the company Rightbound? Some clients have been using it. So Rightbound is, as I understand it, it is more like a Conversica, where it's weaving emails in the background with bot assistance. And then, and for example, if they say, yeah, I'd like to learn more, then it hands it off to Sarah, and they go, I want to introduce you to Sarah. And you go, oh, cool, lead. And it's really expensive though too. And so what Rightbound's doing is getting this same weaving campaign done. And then they have an option that's called a survey option. So you know where I'm going with this, right? Sarah, if you take this survey, you're going to get a $50 gift card. But in that survey, you're going to give me enough information to say, like, are you in a buying cycle? Do you experience these problems? Because all it's trying to do is formulate a response back to you with the data you gave me. So now I can talk you into it based off of your data. But you end up just giving $50 gift cards away. And I'm like, I'm very much against that, because I'm not an MQL database stuffer. I'm like, I want to catch you with content, not with a $50 gift card.
No. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's another good place to watch the data, is on your conversion of those to.
Does Tim work there? Tim's got that right down. Yeah, Tim's there. Yeah. So Rightbound, sources new broad ICP and automates outreach, allowing your team to stay well fed. So warmed up and engaged. So I think they do the same thing, right? Where they're going to hand it off. And I used Conversica for a year. I'm not promoting Conversica. I'm just saying I had a team use that, and our email rates were insane. Yeah. Insane, because these bots would weave in and out and be very conversational. And the second someone responded back, they just, boom, okay, Tim, now you're up. And Tim was like, all right, boom, there's my lead. And I didn't have to cadence him. It's just always cadencing everybody, right? And so it kind of used AI detection. So I'm intrigued by that technology. So Tim, yeah, man, like, I'm intrigued with what you guys are doing, because I feel like a lot of this work can be done, because really what we're talking about is writing sequenced email. It is done by a bot, although we may write it. So why couldn't we have the bot just perform the action? And when it's time to show up, we go, hey, Sarah, you're on the clock. Instead of Sarah having to look at all this stuff. I mean, they can look at the analytics for you and use AI. So you don't have to do what we did when we looked at the kind of industry report. It's going to find the nuances of what's working and what's not. And if it's intuitive enough, it should say, we should juggle here to the VP of IT, because that's really where we're getting our good responses. So the AI is going to correct this and only go to that title. Like, that would be, I would buy that, Tim, like tomorrow, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just to be devil's advocate to Tim, and Tim, pipe up, put on that mic.
Yeah, Tim,
if you want to have a little battle about it. But yes, there have been many examples of this, the gift card thing, right? Iterations, versions of that thing. I actually did one myself when I was prospecting full time. Because I watched a podcast. We actually had somebody on the Predictable Revenue podcast before my time, who did the coffee, like, buy you a coffee thing. And it was like, hey, can I buy you a coffee? And can we have a meeting and whatever? And like you said, the email stats can be really good, because the people are clicking on that email, or with a great gift card and something that sounds worth their while, they're even showing up to that demo. But what you got to be careful of is what happens on the other side. Like when you're following it through the rest of the pipeline. If those people aren't in the buying window, and if they don't have the problem, they're not going to buy anyway. They'll show up for that demo, and that's great. It's another person maybe that you can nurture over time. You're not going to get somebody to close faster because you got them on that demo. So I'm with you, where I'd ideally like to hook them with the content, so that I'm only getting people enter the pipeline who I think I could feasibly close. And I think you get a little bit of a front loaded a pipeline when you offer an incentive for a meeting. But Tim, come at us. Tell us, prove us wrong.
No, I mean, what do you want to know? Like, what, I guess, like, I don't know how to attack or approach this. Like, what is the, I guess, like, the overarching, like, thought with this type of strategy?
Yes. Well, so what we are arguing is that we don't see the value in going for a like offering a gift card or having a survey and then the result of that is a gift card and there's your lead generated. I guess like offering an incentive for somebody to join that meeting or to engage with you as opposed to them genuinely of their own volition saying like, yes, I want to have that next conversation because you get me. So if that's something that you guys do at Rightbound, we want to hear why you think that works.
Yeah, so I think it's like, first of all, like it's really hard to turn down a gift card, right? Like if you see in the subject line $25 gift card or something like that, like yeah, I mean it's gonna be hard to say no to that. I take a gift card.
Right.
But I think that the questions that we're asking are relevant, and like Steve, you mentioned earlier, poking the bear, that we're getting into like, we know that you are dealing with some of these issues, right? And because we know that, we're going to use these questions to figure out exactly which issue it is. Then I'm then armed with discovery that I didn't even have to do. They filled out the email. They sent it to me. I know what they're struggling with. Now I call them. Now I email them and say, hey, I know you're struggling with manual research. I know your reps hate it. I know 40% of reps say that that's their least favorite thing to do. I hate doing it. Let's stop doing that then. There's a solution for it that not only is software better at it, but software is also more efficient than humans. So it's more so like, I get it. Like people get gift card emails all the time. We're asking relevant questions that really drill down into what are you actually dealing with right now and struggling with. And if it's nothing, cool, perfect. So that's
I think
kind of the strategy behind it.
You're actually doing it a little bit further up the funnel than a lot of other companies are doing it. So you are sort of mitigating the thing that we're saying we don't like about it, which is that we're saying book the demo through the incentive. What you're saying is tell me some stuff with this incentive. I then still need to get you to convert to a demo. And if you don't want to, you're not going to. So we're not going to get the vanity metric of like a puffed up demo stage where there's thousands of people there that never move, because you guys are doing a little further up the funnel. And I think that's actually a really interesting strategy. And I rescind my insult.
No, it's good. You can't book a demo from that email. It's only for discovery.
That makes sense.
So
very cool.
That's good. Very cool. Well, I'm hearing about your tool a lot, by the way, Tim. So you guys are doing something in the market that obviously is making an impact. And I think there is so much. The other thing I would want to bring up and kind of closing, I guess we're getting towards the end, is like there's this big hot topic of intent data. And I have yet to make a living on outbound with intent data. Now, that does not mean it does not work. It absolutely can work. And I think that when I look at intent data, I'm looking at paid retargeting and then selecting those that are intentional, perhaps in my ICP, and then sort of not run to them right away, but the intention can be from anywhere because you just know it's at predictable revenue. Well, I have no idea. If it's someone on my web or who has an intention at predictable revenue and I sell this, and that's a keyword, it must mean that they're looking for this. We've all found that that isn't necessarily the truth, or Sarah is, and she's hiding from every cold call, email, and LinkedIn connection that you're throwing her way. So working on her own. Yeah, she's going to figure it out on herself. So I would almost look at intent data with like, I'll give this example. We're rolling out a TikTok channel, and I said to the community manager today, I said, it's as important that people follow us as we follow companies that we want to do business with, because we have to interact with them on TikTok for a long time before we're ever going to do business in real life. And it sounded so silly to say that because I'm like, what am I even saying? Well, if the truth is like, if that's the medium that they are most highly likely to respond to you, how do you find that out, right? And so when Sarah brought up multi-channels, is we don't know. Content resides over any channels. The AM, FM radio, the internet. We're here right now. This is content that can be written. I can speak it to you. We can have a conversation that's dialogue. Well, still there's content that I'm verbalizing to you. And so it's cadences to me. And the reason that the Rightbound thing was timely, Tim, that you were here, is like, we got to look at doing things a little bit differently, which isn't just call, email. It's how do I find which social platform they're on versus just LinkedIn connection requests? Because Sarah was right. There's a lot of industries. If you sell janitorial supplies, you're going to save your money on LinkedIn, right? It ain't happening there. But janitors are people. They have phones. They're very intelligent people. Like, where do they live? Is it TikTok? I don't know. Like, who's the person? Go find it, and you will be rewarded handsomely when you do the work to be the one to crack that code versus just try and do the same thing everybody else is doing, banging their head and assuming because you're good, you'll have a decent result because you'll convert more. Convert more by going to the right channel. Then you have to give yourself the bonus of being good by converting a higher percentage of more. Like, that's a good math equation.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to go do the digging to understand where this person spends their time online or not online or whatever. And in some cases, maybe it is something like a trade show. Like, these people, you just can't find them online, but they do go to this industry event or they're part of this industry association or whatever. But yeah, you've got to find where they spend their time and then meet them there. Be there so that when they're looking for stuff, when they're communicating with other people in their field, you're right there with them. I think a good place to wrap us up will be on the sequence design, like the actual cadence, sort of steps, frequency, number, all of that kind of stuff. Because we've talked about the content and the intention behind it. And it was actually a question we got just a couple of minutes ago, but what is the ideal kind of gap in days between emails? So tell us, Stephen, about your kind of tried and true sequence design that you follow.
Emails for me, days 1, 3, 7, 10, and 12. So I kind of space out 3 to 7. 3 is going to be a cluster hooked back to the subject line of email 1 that's set, right? So you got in, you come back 2 days later, right? But on day 1 and day 2, there's phone calls. So phone calls every day, 12 out of 16 days. And that's just us, right? That's what works. 97% of everything we convert is over the phone. And I know everybody's like, oh my God, we got to get email. We're like, yes, but how do we supplement it with email to get more versus trying to replace what we're doing on phone via email? So it's a little bit of a trick in the box right now. We're pretty good on the phone, so we lean on it, right? Email's hard. It's harder than people think, I think, and that's where we're caught up. It's 16 steps over 12 days is seemingly the best ingredient, where we use lead with the problem we solve, provide some proof, call to action at the bottom. So I'm looking at, like, the first email is, here's the problem I solve. And then I come back day 3 with a hook saying, by the way, I'm here again, here's some proof I can do it. When I wait till day 7, new subject line, new email, proof, like real firm storytelling proof. Hook back to it with one more evidence of proof, but a big splash of proof. Like, don't make it that number that says 900% ROI, like make it like a story. And then the persuasion is the final one, new subject line. Don't hook it back to the first email or anything, because that can kill you. And that is the firm call to action, where I say, Sarah, I've sent you 10, I've sent you 4 or 5 emails, giving you 10 calls. You're still here. I'm still here. This is getting awkward. Is it someone else in your department who you would want to delegate this to, or am I just missing completely here? Whatever you want to do there, because I just made that up kind of on the spot. There's so many different ways to leave. Yeah. Is it circle? Yes, no, you got eaten by a crocodile. Those things are out. But however you choose to leave, go out with a splash, like Sarah said. And to me, that firm call to action is, it has to feel like, if you don't click this, I'm going to give you a little bit of FOMO, right? There's a little bit of FOMO here. What's on the other side of this thing? And so that's how I like to end it. And then we're doing calls all the way up. Our last step is actually a call. So after we give the goodbye email, we call the next day with a sympathy one that says, I wanted to call one more time. And so we do end with a call step.
Amazing. And do you see a time of day that is best for emails, calls, any of that?
Lately, 3:30 to 5:30 has been phenomenal, but it's seasonal. Like during Christmas, we saw 7 to 8:30 a.m. being the best time. And so, like, everybody's up, they're anxious, money's a thing, and it's a mess for 2 months. But now they're settling in. Spring break has happened, so I feel like people are like, man, I want to kind of cut out of work. I want to put my flip flops on, and hopefully barbecue season's here. So we got to kind of play with the seasonality. In the summer, we also find that we set the most meetings on the day before a holiday. And I think the reason is because nobody else is calling for the most part. So we're like the only ones in the swim lane.
Awesome. And are you leaving a voicemail on every single one of your 12 calls?
We do. We use the voicemail to point back or forward to the subject line of the email we sent. Now, if you're calling 100 people, don't leave 100 voicemails. Do the auto drop. If you're doing high volume, if you're calling 10 to 20, do your own. Hey, Sarah, it's me. Blah, blah, blah. Right. But then I say, I'm going to send you, or I just sent you. And with your tool, you may be able to, when I hang up the phone, it says, boom, I'm going to send an email in 1 minute and 3 seconds. So you can automate a lot of that to kind of work in the background. And I can, there's happy to hop offline with you guys on LinkedIn and kind of chat about how that can work if it doesn't work for you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that is a perfect place to wrap it up and do a little, just explanation of where people can ask you more and where people can learn more from you if they do want to get in touch with you. Obviously, you're on LinkedIn. They can follow you on LinkedIn. doing lots of good
Yeah.
stuff there. Where else can they get in touch with you, talk to you, all those things?
You can email me at steve@risewithtidal, RISEWITHTIDAL, Tidal like the wave. Or, shoot me a text, 605-214-8000. That is the mobile. So we just don't have a lot of strange numbers here in South Dakota. You get the one that looks like a desk number, but yeah, happy to reach out, engage with me, and I'm more than happy to help you out. That's my true passion, is just helping people get better.
Amazing. And same goes for me. You guys can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email to Sarah with an H at predictablerevenue.com. I also love to do this type of thing. Love to talk to you guys about what's working and what's not. And of course, we do this also as a business. So if you are looking for help in building your email sequences and building your whole overarching sales development strategy, any of that, I am the head of the coaching team, and that's exactly what we do at Predictable Revenue. So please shoot me a note and ask me about that, and I'd be happy to have a quick call with you and see if anything makes sense. Quick note to Tim, when we were talking about you could like leverage yourself as a thought leader, you should get a little clip of yourself in this webinar and be like, if you want to check out why, this Rightbound works so well, here's me on that webinar with Predictable Revenue and
that's
and
content.
Tidal. I think it's great.
That.
I think it's great. You've just launched your content creation career.
I love it.
Cool.
That's real life stuff, right? You can say, here's the thing where I'm talking about why this didn't work, and you can see the moment where we kind of stopped. I love it. Sorry to end that was a good segue, totally. But I'm like, there you go. That's content. Like, that's content.
It is.
Use it.
It is. And you won us fair and square. This, I swear it wasn't a plug, you guys. He didn't pay for this slot. It was real.
It's true. It's so true. And yes, I had the exact same thought. I was like, man, I cannot wait to clip this and use it for myself. Yes. So happy that I joined today.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks for accommodating the switch over to Zoom. Loved having you all in here. Thanks for engaging. Thanks for being in the chat. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.